So we have a major update in regards to Tesla stock that we absolutely have to talk about because we got a lot of great news within the last few hours that I want to go ahead and touch on. Now, if you're not familiar with the channel, my name is Justin from Push and Profit. We've been featured on Yahoo Finance, Market Watch, and Bazinga, and a few other media outlets. And I often talk about the market. I provide commentary. And I talk very often about Tesla stock. And quite interestingly, I made a video about Tesla stock the other day, and I talked about how the sell-off was taking place, but it could very likely be a nothing burger. So if you haven't been paying attention to the market, not only was Tesla stock selling off pretty much in the last trading session, but if you take a look at the S&P 500, we saw a huge bearish candle. Same thing with the NASDAQ, right? If you take a look at the QQQ, which is the NASDAQ Index ETF, similar situation taking place. And so this was due to a post from Trump on his platform Truth Social mentioning that we are probably or likely to go ahead and go a little bit harder on China with tariffs. However, I want to introduce you guys to something called the taco trade, right? So if you don't know what that is, I actually want to share this because it's kind of funny. We have here a chart of the VIX, right? And so if you don't know what the taco trade is, it really just stands for Trump always chickens out. And it's not a bad thing, right? But it's just that we often hear a lot of kind of powerful strength from Trump saying, look, we're going to go ahead and do this, only to then kind of have this backpedaling take place, right? So we have this chart and you constantly see this pattern for the entirety of this year, right? I mean, look at Liberation Day. This was horrible, right? We ended up seeing the market tank only to just get some relief later of Trump pausing the tariffs, kind of pushing it to the side. It's just a pattern that just keeps repeating itself. Well, we actually got good news because Trump's Truth Social post that he recently made about going harder on China with tariffs, well, we actually see he made a post just today, just a few hours ago, saying, don't worry about China. It will all be fine. Highly respected President Xi just had a bad moment. He doesn't want depression for his country, and neither do I. The USA wants to help China, not hurt it. President Donald J. Trump, he signed. So kind of signaling, hey, look. Essentially, what we talked about yesterday, not having the meeting with, President Xi, right? That is likely, going to be changing, and we're going to be working together. At least this is what we're hearing from Trump's side. And so, again, that kind of brings us back to the taco trade. Trump always chickens out. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's just we get a lot of panic in the market only to have some relief just a few days later. And we actually have this post here from Unusual Whales. It's a big page on X, on Twitter. And they wrote on October 10th, today was the worst day in the market since April. And actually quote tweeted it saying, look, last April was such a great time to buy. And if we take a look, let's actually take a look at the S&P 500 last April, right? So this was last April, and that was such a great time to buy. And so essentially, when there's a lot of panicking going on, oftentimes it presents with a great opportunity to go ahead and buy into a lot of names at discounted prices, right? Not always, but that seems to be the case, especially with the so-called taco trade, which just brings me to my favorite quote that I wanted to share with you guys. I know I've shared this on the channel before, but we suffer more often in imagination than reality. And I want this quote to be shared because there was a lot of individuals, especially the crypto bros, right? I don't talk much about crypto on the channel, but if you were on Twitter, on X, we had the largest sell-off in crypto that we've seen in history, and we're starting to see crypto now start to bounce off or start to kind of recover, right? Because the crypto markets are open and you're seeing crypto kind of recover. And so, it just goes to show, do not panic. But going back into Tesla, right? So I talked about, look, if we do continue selling off, we'll want to see what Tesla does around this blue line here, which is a 200-day or 200-period exponential moving average. And of course, that has been respected in the past with Tesla multiple times. And I mentioned that, look, we could fill this breakaway gap and ultimately start to bounce up. And I mentioned that from a technical perspective, breakaway gaps don't often get filled. But when you have something such as a change in geopolitical tension and also potentially monetary policy, well then, of course, that overrides the technicals, and we could see Tesla stock fall, fill that gap, and then touch the 200 exponential moving average. But now having the news that Trump is kind of saying, look, China doesn't want smoke. We want to go ahead and work together. Well, we may see this whole thing really be a nothing burger and ultimately recover. And guess what? We have Tesla's earnings come out on the 22nd. 22nd. So just 10 days away. And so we get like a new fundamental picture for Tesla. And I mentioned in the past that I believe that fundamentally this is going to look like a great quarter for Tesla simply because of the EV tax credits expiring, which have already expired, which led to a lot of people purchasing Teslas, right? They wanted to get in before the tax credits expired to kind of get that massive discount. And so because of that, we're going to see a quarter likely with a lot of Tesla sales. And we know that Tesla, we talk about it, it's a tech company that also sells cars, but a majority of their revenue, right? Their top line and bottom line, revenue comes from sales of their vehicles. And so, of course, that's why we have to pay attention to the sales of vehicles. And with this earnings coming up, I believe that we're going to have a positive earnings report for Tesla, which could potentially bring Tesla close to its new all-time highs, which honestly is a shock for me. And I'm going to be very honest, right? Around probably a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, I mentioned that I didn't think Tesla was going to hit new all-time highs. We actually didn't. So far I've been right. But at the levels that we're at, plus some positive news fundamentally, that could honestly change things. And we could see Tesla back at around 480. I know, pretty exciting, right? By the way, I just want to quickly disclose, I do have exposure to Tesla in my portfolio. So just kind of, understand that. Now, it is a small portion, right? And a majority of my portfolio still is in gold, simply because I believe there's a lot of uncertainty with the government shutdown. And because of that, tied into, the Federal Reserve not really having a lot of data, they're kind of walking into the blind. We may not see those rate cuts happen as quickly as we wanted. And so that's something that, leaves a little bit of uncertainty for the market. But I do believe that this ultimately is going to be a nothing burger for pretty much Tesla, with the whole concept of Trump kind of, putting some relief or kind of pulling back, chickening out, right? Trump always chickens out. Not necessarily a bad thing. But I want you guys to let me know in the comment section below, what are your thoughts on this, right? Do you think we're still going to go ahead and break below, this, $383 area, and it's going to be significantly worse? Or do you agree that this is honestly just one big nothing burger? Now, just a quick favor, if you haven't done so already, make sure to hit this or hit the like button for this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you guys on this next video right over here. Take care, guys.